we go through some basics about what we call physical oceanography, so the science of the ocean. So here you have a map of the, I mean, it's a schematic map of the mean currents in the surface ocean. So as you can see, there are some large-scale systems. So that's what we call gyres. And here again, you can see the Gulf Stream. But you have similar currents in other places of the world ocean. So this map is very static. It's a kind of a mean picture of what's happening, right? And indeed, it's basically the way we were seeing the ocean until, let's say, about the 90s. So here you have, it's an animation of the surface current in the ocean over the Southern Ocean. So here you have Antarctica. And when you have yellowish colors, it means that you have larger surface speed. So typically 50 centimeters per second here. And what you can see is on this animation, there's not much moving around, okay? It's very stable. So this is obtained with a numerical model. So it's a simulation of what's happening in the ocean. But here we use kind of low resolution. So we don't see exactly what's happening. So we get this kind of average view. But the reality of the ocean, and we saw that when we got more observation, more detailed observation, and also the ability to simulate the finer scale of the ocean. And so that's an equivalent, but now I'm going to ask you to focus on the right panel. So this is also a numerical simulation, but this time you have 6 times more resolution in the calculations. I will put it again. And so broadly speaking, it's the same picture, right? You have this large current, which by the way is called the Antarctic circumpolar current, which is one of the main current system in the global ocean. And that goes all around Antarctica. So overall, you have the same picture with this ring of like Hans surface currents. But you can see that there's other features that were not seen here. And there comes as rings. So when it's very red, it means that it's very large velocities that goes up to 2 meters per second in the surface. So you can see that there is variability. There are rings being shed. There also a filamentous structure of currents. And this is very complex, actually, to observe and to study. And this is really at the core of the difficulty in physical oceanography, is to understand these small scales. And another illustration of the same basic idea is here you have a map. So that was done by Benjamin Franklin when he was traveling from Europe to United States, and by his son too, in 1786. So that's the first ever made map of the Gulf Stream. And that looks really like a river, right? It was obtained from the observation that the surface temperature was dropping very abruptly when they were crossing a certain region, and then they mapped it out, and they called it the Gulf Stream because these water were very warm, and so they were coming from the south, from the Gulf of Mexico, as they assumed, and actually right assumption. But if you look then with a satellite, this is the sea surface temperature, a snapshot. So at one given day, observing the structure of the temperature in the surface, then you see that it's not like this. It's not a very steady river-like flow. But in reality, you have a very intense flow. It's very concentrated, and that then will get unstable and shed rings and eddies, as we call them. And this structure, which is really the Gulf Stream, then is highly complex to study. It's a lot of dynamics. So, what's happening here? Yeah. So first I will ask you, maybe you're not very familiar with how the ocean works. Could you tell me what creates ocean currents? Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, of course, it's a guess. Interesting. So different temperature. What else could create currents? There are three main ingredients and four ingredients, which is also important. Yeah. Um, yes, that's interesting. So yeah, the bottom of the ocean will act as a very strong constraint on the oceanic flow, but I wouldn't claim that it's creating the currents. It's more like interacting and shaping the currents. But it's true that it's a very important player. Yes. Yeah. So rotation of Earth will play a strong role here by shaping the currents. What else? You're actually forgetting the main ones. I mean, these two items are very important, but there's another one that's even, yeah? The? Uh, well, climate is the big name that, includes all of these things together. So uh, all that I'm describing is one part of the climate system. But the climate in itself is more like a description of the state than a process in the system. Yes? Yeah, well, wind, yeah, that was the one I was looking for. Yeah. So the wind, the action of wind at the surface that will push surface waters and that will create currents. There's a last one that plays a role also. Maybe. Any idea? Yes, the tides. Good. You got them all. So the wind is really the main driver of ocean currents, especially near the surface. Um, then we have density differences. So as you say, temperature differences. So in fact, the density, which is the mass per unit volume, may vary in the ocean due to temperature variations or change in the salinity content. If you have more salt, the water will be denser. So, and these two things will combine in creating currents. Then in coastal areas mainly, but also it plays a large role, like for complex reason, I don't have time for that, but ocean tides, so the generation of tidal currents, act to create ocean currents. And finally, the fact that the Earth is rotating is basically the reason why when you look at any map, you kind of see rotational movements everywhere. So I have a movie for you. So where is the mouse? Video, full screen. So yeah, here it's a visualization of ocean currents. Of course, it's kind of an artistic view. So the white line are kind of a streamline of the flow, and the more you see white lines, and the more focused is the current. This is artistic, and yet it is based on numerical simulation. So it was computed using estimates of the circulation at the surface of the ocean. So you can see that you have wheels of currents everywhere, what we call eddies. You have more or less large-scale movements. And I will jump toward the end, because during the rest of this presentation, I will focus a lot on the Southern Ocean again. And so where you can see this very large scale ocean current that's called the Antarctic Circumpolar Current. It's 20,000 kilometers long. It's very large scale, and it acts to isolate the Antarctic continent from the rest of the Earth in a climate sense. So where am I now? Yeah, so here you have a view of the ocean bottom, the topography of the ocean. And you have a major feature here is the opening here between South America and Antarctica, which is called Drake Passage. And that's the only place on Earth where you can have a flow that goes across with no boundary from continents, so that it can go circumpolar. And that will play a very important role in shaping the large-scale ocean circulation. And you have 135, so what we call sphere drop is 1 million meter cube per second that go around Antarctica. So to get some scales, some idea what it means, if you put all the rivers together in one flow, that would represent one sphere drop, 1 million meter cube per second. So the Gulf Stream is typically 30 sphere drops, so 30 times all the rivers taken together. And this one, the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, is actually way more. It's more than 100 sphere drops. So it's huge amount of water circulating continuously in the ocean. And it plays a very large role on the climate system, because it actually connects all the water masses of the different basins. So you have here a schematic where the Antarctica is put at the center, and then you have each sub-basin, so Atlantic, Indian, and Pacific. And each of these arrows with the color indicates some pathway of water masses at different depths, and all being then connected back into the Southern Ocean. Okay? And so as a kind of joke, we call it the ring. It's the one ring to rule them all, one ring to fight them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. Okay? So actually, yeah, Tolkien got his inspiration from physical oceanography. It's not a story that's well known, but it's true. And the Southern Ocean is also very important for life and biology, because if you look carefully here, you can see that the arrows are going from depths to the surface toward Antarctica. They bring them with them a lot of nutrients, so that can support very large blooms of chlorophyll that then will sustain a very intense ecosystem in the Southern Ocean. So this is really where the marine mammals, elephants included, lives. You know, that's their environment. All this patch of chlorophyll will then be at the source of development of fish, and that will be their food. So now, how can you study the oceans? Because the oceans are really big. At the scale of Earth, it's 70% of the surface area of Earth. And if you want to understand the ocean, because it's all very well connected, you really need to observe it globally, like to go in every places in the ocean and get observations. And recently, especially since the 90s, and even more so since the early 21st century, we have now amazing ways to observe the ocean. So first, we have the spatial observations. And the 90s, why I'm talking about the 90s, because it's when we launched altimetry. So altimetry is the measure of sea surface height. And just by looking how high is the sea surface, you can actually tell a lot about the circulation. Then we also get field observations. And that's really what I'm going to focus on with the program I'm going to present. And then the third part that's really important in our framework to study the ocean in the modern era is the computer models. So from then, we can integrate all the observations, produce forecasts, and do climate research. So to produce field observations is quite complicated and it costs a lot in general. So the traditional way, and actually that started, I mean, you could date back to Benjamin Franklin having a small thermometer along his way to Europe, but more recently, since the 1920s and the first major cruise, the method has changed, but not that much, in fact. So you take a research vessel. So here, for example, the Marion Dufresne, which is the French vessel, that is based in La Réunion here, 20 degrees south. And then that operates yearly in the area here of the Southern Indian Ocean, which is marked by the Kerguelen Islands and Crozet Islands, which are subantarctic islands. And here I'm going to talk about an oceanographic cruise that I did in 2009, where we left from Fremantle in Australia with the Marion Dufresne, went on this site here to study the currents, and then back to La Réunion. So you can see how we work. So this is the team. That was actually a rather small oceanographic cruise. I mean, it's quite frequent for a major cruise to have more than 100 researchers on board. And all of them will focus on different type of measurement of the water. But the most fundamental type of measurement for physical oceanography remains what we call CTD. So that goes for conductivity, temperature, depth. And from there, what you measure is vertical profiles of variation in temperature and variation in salinity. And from them, you can derive the variation in density. And the method is very basic. I mean, you have a winch, you have a cable, you have instrument, and you lower instruments that are profiling the seawater properties. That can take a long time, actually, because you wouldn't think about it, but if you are in an area like kind of standard with 5 kilometers of water below the ship, and you have thus a cable that is 5 kilometers long, and then you have to unroll and re-roll. And so typically that can last for 5-6 hours of work, just standing in a station and waiting for the instrument to go down and up again. But so that's the very basic way to do it, and it's by far the most accurate, because then, of course, you can have full control on the data quality, and you can also do water sampling, so you can really do the measurements in the best best possible way. So here, during this cruise, we were interested in this region here. So here you have the Kerguelen Islands, and the picture gives you the bottom topography. So actually, the Kerguelen Islands represent the summit of a large underwater plateau, which is called the Kerguelen Plateau. And it's a very interesting place because the Antarctic circumpolar current has to go through this plateau. It has to find a way. So it will interact a lot with this topography. And it turns out that you have a passage here, which is quite deep. It's 2.5 kilometers deep. And that's actually where most of the water masses that goes across the Kerguelen Plateau will go. And so that's why here you have the track of the cruise here, the black line, and each red dot is a station. The ship stopped. We unroll the cable, re-roll it, and get the measurements. And so we focus mainly on this region with this deep trough. So another view, but anyway. So here is one of the results of this cruise. So here you have one section going across this trough with the temperature here as a function of pressure. And pressure is more or less the same as depth, so you can view that as depth. So here is depth, here is distance, so 0 is here, so that's north. And then 450, 70 is the southern point. And then each black line is one station, and then we reconstruct the field of temperature. Same for salinity. What you can see is that right at the passage of the trough, the properties are changing very fast. Maybe you can see that. That's typical of a large-scale ocean current that's always associated with abrupt variation in temperature and salinity for physical reasons. So that across the trough, where the properties are changing fast, you also have here the velocity that was measured directly by an instrument. And you can see that you have a very sharp current that go right across the trough with velocity that are almost 1 meter per second at the surface. So that's one nice thing. But also what's very interesting is that it goes very deep. I mean, you get pretty large velocities, even at the bottom at 2,000 meters of depth. And that's quite typical of the Southern Ocean. So to go with a research vessel, as I said, it's the way to produce the best data, but it has some drawbacks. So it's very expensive and time-consuming. Satellite observation is great because you get a global coverage or nearly global coverage, and it's uninterrupted. But the problem then is that you only see the surface. You have no radiation that can go through water. So you can only detect things that are happening at the surface. So now we have actually new possibilities to observe the inside of the ocean without going at sea. So one of them is called the Argo Profiler. So I'm sorry, this animation was not working on this computer. So that was supposed to show you all the Argo Profiler that are currently at sea. So here it was in June 2001, the very beginning of this program. Right now there's 3,500 profilers like this. So this is about 1.5 meters high, and this is an instrument that can go at a certain depth, and then that will profile automatically the water mass properties while going back to the surface and transmit the data by satellite. Every 10 days you get a CTD profile. And so every 10 days you get 3,500 of them. And so we have a global coverage of the interior of the ocean right now, up to 2,000 meter depth. But now an issue with Argo Profiler is that actually in the Southern Ocean, especially the southernmost part of it, the Argo Profiler are failing due to the presence of sea ice, especially. Where the elephant sees one of them with a tag. You can see some forming sea ice around it. And so why would we disturb these nice animals? So, well, the thing is, so elephant seals are very amazing. Their diving capabilities are beyond beyond anything. So here you have 24 hours of the life of an elephant seal when he's at sea as a function of depth. So you can see the profiles of seals. So basically, they are diving always. So they do between 60 and 100 dives per day, and not like shallow dives like 5-10 meters. But here we're talking about 500 meters up to, at the end of the day, up to almost 800 meters of depth. Okay? And they can stay, usually they stay around 20 minutes underwater, but they can stay even more than 1 hour in the most exceptional dives. And so instead of going at sea and with unrolling the cable, or even having a profiling float with a mechanical part that makes it change depth, here we're just using the elephant seals to carry the instruments. So you have here the example of one seal that was instrumented in the Kerguelen Islands, and then going over the Kerguelen Plateau, the northern part of it. And at some point it reached places where you have almost 2,000 meters of depth, and they still, this one was still going to the bottom, probably because that's why he can find his food. So of course it's quite rare. Most elephant seals rarely go beyond 1,000-meter depth, but on average they go at 500 meters or more. So we can really obtain information on very efficiently on the at least first 500 meters. So now the funny part of this project, of this program, is how do you attach a tag on a seal? So the idea is you have a seal, and then you have a tag, and then you have to put it on the seal. So it's actually quite interesting to do that. There are many sites where this has been done. So I've talked a lot already about the Kerguelen Islands, but then you have other sites, and you have several nations doing that. But it's always about the same idea. It's first of all, we want to learn more about the life of elephant seals, and especially how do they find their food, what strategy they follow to maximize their success of what we call foraging, so the research for food. But then also to link it with the environment and to gain information about the ocean. So here is a typical setup for our work. So elephant seals go back to land twice a year, one for reproduction and one for molting. So molting meaning they renew their hair every year between February and March. So this is a picture taken from the Kerguelen Island. It's a very nice island, by the way. That's not the idea we have about the Southern Ocean. I think if you talk about Southern Ocean, most people would have a glacier in mind or something like this. But actually, there are very nice places in the Southern Ocean. If you stay in the subantarctic islands, it looks a lot more like the Northern Europe, basically. So here you have a colony of rockhopper penguins, a few of them. Then you have some wildlife situations. So here a fur seal and a penguin and bird, a petrel. So yeah, I mean, this is just to illustrate the diversity of life that you find on these islands. And all this life rely on food that they found in the ocean. So it's really, they all gather on the island, but then they will all go around the islands in the ocean to find their food. So when they are on the island, that's the good time to put the instrument. So how we do that? There are several methods. The one I show is actually the one that involves most amount of sport. So we have a bag here that we will use to immobilize the elephant seal, like this. So the elephant seal is quite funny because it's not able to go backward. They can move only forward. So once they are in the bag, they basically are stuck there. So then comes the tricky part. So you immobilize literally the animal while we do an injection. So then they are sleeping for about 30 minutes, and that's when we're gonna attach some piece of tissue that will then be used to attach the tag itself. Of course, we also take that time to do some measurement of weight and length of the animal to learn more about the animal itself. And then once the instrument is on the animal, then it will take measurements each time the animal is going back toward the surface, and then it's only a compressed version of the data that's going to be sent by satellite. So the type of satellite is called Argos. That's also by satellite that we get geolocation. Then we receive data, we process the data, and then we can use it for science. So here is how the data looks like. So here you have one example of an elephant seal in the Kerguelen Islands going straight to Antarctica. That's 2,000 kilometer distance. So in 3 weeks, they go to Antarctica, then stay along the Antarctic shelf for a couple of months, then going back to the Kerguelen plateau. And this one stayed a bit on the plateau next to what's called Heard Island here, and then back to Kerguelen Island. And during this way, each point here on this map corresponds to a profile that we received by satellite. So, and then we reconstruct the properties of temperature. So here as a function of pressure equal depth again. And as a function of time, you have the variation of temperatures. And here the same for the salinity. Okay? So you can see that you have a pretty large variation in both temperature and salinity in the first 3 weeks when they go to Antarctica. Then you have very cold water for a couple months when it's on Antarctica with very saline water. And then when they go back, it goes back to Heard, then you get warmer waters and slightly fresher ones. The small lines that you can see, it comes from the compression, so that you get only 20 data points per profile. So that's why you have areas where even if you have a profile, you don't have a data point there. That's what you can see. And actually, this repeating this method several times, it's still running this one. We got quite a few data. Okay. So here I collected on one year, one abstract year, if you will, all the profile that we obtain during almost 10 years. So it's kind of a seasonal distribution of the elephant seals as obtained through this method. And the color is the surface temperature that was deduced from this data. Of course, it's not just the surface temperature that you get, but you also get effectively information on salinity and temperature in the first 100 meters. So you can see in terms of the life of elephant seals some interesting features already. So it's about in January, February that they all leave for a long foraging trip. And so you can see they're spread around, and from them you can see that we have information all around Antarctica. And then they go back for reproduction, leave again for a short period, and then go back to Kerguelen. So here you have around 700 tags, individual tags that were used to produce this map. Where am I? Okay. Yeah, so now I will talk a bit about some of the science we're doing with this data. Of course, I will remain very general, and I don't have too much time to get into the details, but I will give you a few illustrations. So here again, you have the distribution of all the data that we obtain through this methodology. So I should say actually that it's mainly elephant seals, but it's not just elephant seal. We also put instruments on other species. Like Vedel seals, and in the north, some other species of seals, and even sea turtles in French Guiana have been equipped with that. And it's also an international project, so you have several nations doing it, and so it's really by gathering all these efforts from different groups that we are able to produce such a large database. And so one example of such data, so here you have the temperature profiles from Kerguelen to Antarctica. And you can see something that's very peculiar that is observed in the Southern Ocean, is that in the summer, the minimum temperature is actually not at the surface. You can see in all sections, you have a warmer layer on top of a cold layer. So the cold layer is called winter water, and that's a very important characteristic of these regions. So it is possible to sustain this condition. So of course, cold water is denser than warm water. So in theory, you couldn't have cold water sitting above warm water. But this is still possible here because it's the salinity, in fact, that more than compensate for this drop in density due to temperature. So, so anyway, you have the winter waters that are characteristic of this region. And by having all this section here within 1 month, we have been able to map the circulation and the properties over the entire Kerguelen plateau and analyze the structure of currents there. So if you would look at two given sections, one taken west of the plateau and one across the plateau. So this is temperature and salinity west of the plateau, and then across the plateau. Yeah, forget about this. But what I want to show here is that variation in properties best seen in the salinity west of the plateau are gradual. Because you don't have so much bathymetry to force concentration of currents. But by the time you cross the plateau, actually, then the water masses are channeled through the trough. And so now you have variation in the properties that's much more concentrated due to the topography. And so when you look at a map, then that we were able to reconstruct the map of mean ocean currents in the region. And this is the Kerguelen Plateau here. And so the major feature was that across this passage, actually, 40% of the Antarctic circumpolar current is channeled through. And the water masses that you find here are actually coming from a very large latitude range west of the plateau. So it's really the bathymetry that acts to channel the water masses. Another example of the use is over the Antarctic continental shelf. We have a lot of data because it's a favored site of foraging for the animals. And this is a place that's very important for climate, actually, for several reasons. One of them is that it is the point of contact with the ice cap, and it is the region where the ice cap is melting through ice shelf interaction with the ocean. And in fact, on this map, you can see, so the colors are the temperature of the water. So you see that it's reddish on this side of Antarctica, where it's more like bluish otherwise. And the ice shelf that are melting the fastest, that are given with red, so here, 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 are all associated with warm ocean temperature. And as it turned out, it's really the ocean that control the rate of melting of the ice cap in Antarctica by warming it from below by providing warm water. And this water is warming right now, so that gives a lot of uncertainty because we don't know so much about these processes there. But the ice that is capped over this continent would represent 6 meters of sea level rise if it would all melt in the ocean. So due to these processes, we need to know a lot more about it because it gives a very large uncertainty on the rate of sea level rise coming from this continent. It is also the region of formation of bottom water. So the ocean bottom water of almost all the ocean is actually produced in these areas, here, 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 and here. So we need to have data on this region if we want to understand the large-scale circulation of the abyss in the ocean. And finally, it's a key region for life. And especially the sea ice is a very good site for the development of chlorophyll and then krill. And so the whole food chain that is very active in this region depends on sea ice. So for all these reasons, we need more data. And then using elephant seals provide us with a lot of data. So here, each data point is a profile that was obtained thanks to an elephant seal in this particular area here, which is one where the ice cap are melting fast. And analyzing the properties of salinity and temperature based on this data was possible to show that most of the melting coming from ice shelves actually happens in these particular regions here. So this is the Wilkins ice shelf. This is the Venable ice shelf. And we actually learned more about also the circulation over this area. So this is a shelf area, so that's only about 500 meters deep. But that's where really the interaction with the ice shelf takes place. So it's very important to get data there. Yeah, so that's about all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Maybe one question? That's okay? Do we have any questions? One or two questions, perhaps? No? Okay, starting
there. So I was just wondering about when you were attaching the tag to the seal's head, what were you using, that white thing? What was that? Is that some kind of...
The glue is simply epoxy. So it's a very common type of glue. It's one where you have two paths that you mix together, and you can buy that in any shop, basically.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
You wanted to ask a question?
I wondered if you could address like any problems with like the attachment, like because obviously seals are prey for bigger predators and stuff, so a lot of instruments must disappear during the way and like fall off and stuff.
No, actually, they are not. Elephant seals are on the top of the food chain. It's only the very first year of their life where they can be attacked by killer whales, for example, or leopard seals, or some very aggressive type of animals. But they are so big that they don't have a predator on top of them, really. But of course, then they have still a reason for them to die, mortality rate. So usually we just lost tags because the battery failed after a few months, and quite often also we can recover the tag if they go back to land before the tag stopped to work. Then we would catch the seal again and take the tag, and then actually it's very interesting when we can do that, because all the data is stored, archived in the tag. So if you recover the tag, you get the full resolution data set. So a lot more information than just what's transmitted by satellite. So far, we have about 50 tags that we've been recovered like this. So, but yeah, no, they don't fear much predators. I mean, just to have an idea, but a female would be around 500 kilos, and the male would easily be above 1.5 ton or 2 tons.
Okay, thank you, Fabien.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
What about the ethical aspect?
Uh,
Does it in any way harm them?